it goes. Hey guys, I'm going to read to you the story behind Banksy, which was published in the Smithsonian in February of 2013. When you finish listening to this article, there are a bunch of questions in a Google form that you'll have to go through and answer. So you may want to have the Google form open for yourself right now, so you can read through the questions. In fact, let's do this the smart way, right? And let's read through the questions before we read the article. So anytime you have questions about something that you're going to read, it's a good idea to read through the questions before you actually read the article, so that while you're reading it, you have those questions in the back of your head. So the first question, and just saying, the answers are in the order of the questions in the article. So if you don't find an answer for one question, but you do find the questions after that, you have to go back. So that'll give you a little clue as to where you'll find it. But the first question, what magazine selected Banksy as one of the world's most influential people in 2010? Second question, in paragraph 1, the author mentions that Banksy has, quote unquote, bombed cities from Vienna to San Francisco, Barcelona to Paris, and Detroit. What does the author mean by the word bombed? Third question, read paragraph 4 and describe how Banksy felt about working in the Barton Hill district of Bristol in the 1980s, and why did he feel this way? Make sure you answer both parts of the question, okay? You can only get full credit if you answer both parts. In paragraph 6, the author describes his favorite Banksy piece. It's not shown in the article, but I put a picture of it here for you because there is a description in the article. But the question is asking you where that artwork is located. In paragraphs 10 and 11, the author describes Banksy's own brand of prankster performance art. Paraphrase, using your own words, what the pranks consisted of. Photos of the art he created as part of these pranks is below. So here's one picture right here. Here's another one. And here is an image showing the man who went into the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City to hang up this painting. In paragraph 12, the author refers to 3 paintings by Banksy painted on the concrete walls of the West Bank in Israel. What was the theme of these images? So you might be able to tell just by looking at the images, but the author mentions the theme in the article. 2 months after returning from Israel, Banksy mounted a show titled Crude Oils. What was running around the exhibition space that would have freaked out most art critics? Actually would have freaked Mrs. Coon out too. And the last question, in paragraph 20, the author explains why he believes Banksy's subversiveness may be diminishing. What is the cause? Okay, so now we'll go back and we'll read the article. And we'll start right now. So the story behind Banksy. On his way to becoming an international icon, the subversive and secretive street artist turned the art world upside down. When Time magazine selected British artist Banksy, graffiti master, painter, activist, filmmaker, and all-purpose provocateur, for its list of the world's 100 most influential people in 2010, he found himself in the company of Barack Obama, Steve Jobs, and Lady Gaga. He supplied a picture of himself with a paper bag, recyclable naturally, over his head. Most of his fans don't really want to know who he is and have loudly protested Fleet Street's attempts to unmask him. But they do want to follow his upward trajectory from the outlaw spraying, or as the argot has it, bombing, walls in Bristol, England during the 1990s, to the artist whose work commands hundreds of thousands of dollars in the auction houses of Britain and America. Today, he has bombed cities from Vienna to San Francisco, Barcelona to Paris, and Detroit. And he has moved from graffiti on gritty urban walls to paint on canvas, conceptual sculpture, and even film, with the guileful documentary Exit Through the Gift Shop, which was nominated for an Academy Award. Pest Control, the tongue-in-cheek titled organization set up by the artist to authenticate the real Banksy artwork, also protects him from prying outsiders. Hiding behind a paper bag, or more commonly, email, Banksy relentlessly controls his own narrative. His last face-to-face interview took place in 2003. While he may shelter behind a concealed identity, he advocates a direct connection between an artist and his constituency. There's a whole new audience out there, and it's never been easier to sell one's art, Banksy has maintained. You don't have to go to college, drag round a portfolio, mail off transparencies to snooty galleries, or sleep with someone powerful. All you need now is a few ideas and a broadband connection. That's the internet. This is the first time the essentially bourgeoisie world of art has belonged to the people. We need to make it count. The Barton Hill district of Bristol in the 1980s was a scary part of town. Very white, probably no more than 3 black families had somehow ended up there. Working class, rundown, and unwelcoming to strangers. So when Banksy, who came from a much leafier part of town, decided to go make his first foray there, he was nervous. My dad was badly beaten up there as a kid, he told fellow graffiti artist and author Felix Braun. He was trying out names at the time, sometimes signing himself Robin Banks, although this soon evolved into Banksy. The shortened monkier may have demonstrated less of the gangsters robbing banks cachet, but it was more memorable and easier to write on a wall. Around this time, he also settled on his distinctive stencil approach to graffiti. When he was 18, he once wrote he was painting a train with a gang of mates when the British Transport Police showed up and everyone ran. The rest of my mates made it to the car, Banksy recalled, and I disappeared. So I spent over an hour hidden under a dumpster truck with engine oil leaking all over me. As I lay there listening to the cops on the tracks, I realized I had to cut my painting time in half or give it up altogether. I was staring straight up at the stenciled plate on the bottom of the fuel tank when I realized I could just copy that style and make each letter 3 feet high. But he also told his friend, author Tristan Manco, as soon as I cut my first stencil, I could feel the power there. I also like the political edge. All graffiti is low-level dissent, but stencils have an extra history. They've been used to start revolutions and to stop wars. The people and the apes and rats he drew in those early days have a strange primitive feel to them. My favorite is a piece that greets you when you enter the Pierced Up Tattoo Parlor in Bristol. The wall painting depicts giant wasps with television sets strapped on as additional weapons, dive bombing a tempting bunch of flowers in a vase. Parlor manager Marianne Kemp recalls Banksy's marathon painting session. It was an all-nighter. By 1999, he was headed to London. He was also beginning to retreat into anonymity. Evading the authorities was one explanation. Banksy has issues with the cops. But he also discovered that anonymity created its own invaluable buzz. As his street art appeared in cities across Britain, comparisons to Jean-Michel Basquiat and Keith Haring began circulating. Banksy's first London exhibition, so to speak, took place in Rivington Street in 2001, when he and fellow street artists convened in a tunnel near a pub. We hung up some decorator signs nicked off a building site, he later wrote, and painted the walls white wearing overalls. We got the artwork up in 25 minutes and held an opening party later that week with beers and some hip hop pumping out of the back of a transit van. About 500 people turned up to an opening, which had cost almost nothing to set up. In July of 2003, Banksy mounted Turf War, his breakthrough exhibition, staged in a former warehouse in Hackney. The show dazzled the London art scene with its carnival atmosphere display, which featured a live heifer, that's a female cow, its hide embellished with a portrait of Andy Warhol, as well as Queen Elizabeth II in the guise of a chimpanzee. Later that year, a tall, bearded figure in a dark overcoat, scarf, and floppy hat strolled into Tate Britain, clutching a large paper bag. The Tate is like the London version of the Metropolitan Museum in Art. It's a huge museum. He made his way to room 7 on the second level. He then dug out his own picture, an unsigned oil painting of a rural scene he had found in a London street market. Across the canvas, he had titled "Crime Watch UK has ruined the countryside for all of us." He had stenciled blue and white police crime scene tape. During the next 17 months, always in disguise, Banksy brought his own brand of prankster performance art to major museums, including the Louvre. There, he succeeded in installing an image of the Mona Lisa plastered with a smiley face sticker. In New York City, he serendipitously attached a small portrait of a woman, which he had found and modified to depict the subject wearing a gas mask, to a wall in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The museum took it in stride. I think it's fair to say, spokesman Elise Topolian told the New York Times, it would take more than a piece of Scotch tape to get a work of art into the Met. Banksy became an international star in 2005. In August, he arrived in Israel, where he painted a series of images on the West Bank's concrete walls, part of the barrier built to stop suicide bombers. Images of a girl clutching balloons as she is transported to the top of the wall, 2 stenciled children with bucket and spade dreaming of the beach, and a boy with a ladder propped against the wall were poignant meditations on the theme of escape. 2 months after returning from Israel, Banksy's London exhibition, Crude Oils, took the art of the subversive mashup to new heights. Claude Monet's water lilies, reworked to include trash cans and shopping carts floating among lily pads. A street hooligan smashing the window depicted in a reimagining of Edward Hopper's Nighthawks. A signature Banksy touch, including 164 rats, live rats, skittered around the gallery and testing critics' mettle. There was an inevitability to Banksy's incursion into Los Angeles with the show Barely Legal in September 2006. Hollywood, he once said, is a town where they honor their heroes by writing their names on the pavement to be walked on by fat people and peed on by dogs. It seems like a great place to come and be ambitious. Crowds of 30,000 or so, among them Brad Pitt, were in attendance. Banksy does all this and he stays anonymous, Pitt told the LA Times almost wistfully. I think it's great. The exhibition's centerpiece was an 8,000-pound live elephant slathered in red paint and overlaid with a fleur-de-lis pattern. LA's outspoken animal rights advocates were incensed. The authorities ordered the paint to be washed off. Flyers distributed to the glittering crowd made the point that, quote, there's an elephant in the room. 20 billion people live below the poverty line. In February of 2008, 7 months before the collapse of Lehman Brothers, New York's rich and famous gathered at Sotheby's for a night of serious spending. The event, organized by Bono, artist Damien Hirst, Sotheby's, and the Gagosian Gallery, turned out to be the biggest charity art auction ever, raising $42.5 million to support AIDS programs in Africa. Banksy's Ruined Landscape, a pastoral scene with the slogan, "This is not a photo opportunity," pasted across it, sold for $385,000. A vandalized phone box, an actual British phone booth, bent nearly 90 degrees and bleeding red paint where a pickaxe had pierced it, commandeered $605,000. 3 years later, the buyer was revealed to be Mark Getty, grandson of J. Paul Getty. Banksy took on the medium of film in Exit Through the Gift Shop, an antic, sideways 2010 documentary on the creation and marketing of street art. The New York Times described it as paralleling Banksy's best work, a trompe l'oeil, a film that looks like a documentary but feels like a monumental con. It was shortlisted for an Oscar in the 2010 documentary category. When the Museum of Contemporary Art, Los Angeles, put on its comprehensive survey of street art and graffiti in 2011, Banksy was well represented in the field of 50 artists. The show was a high-profile demonstration of the phenomenon that had has come to be known as the Banksy effect. The artist's astounding success in bringing urban outsider art into the cultural and increasingly profitable mainstream. It could be said that Banksy's subversiveness diminishes as his prices rise. He may well have reached the tipping point where his success makes it impossible for him to remain rooted in the subculture he emerged from. The riots in the Stokes Croft area of Bristol in spring 2011 offer a cautionary tale. The episode began after police raided protesters who were opposed to the opening of a Tesco Metro supermarket and living quarters as squatters in nearby apartments. The authorities later said that they took action after receiving information that the group was making petrol bombs. Banksy's response was to produce a 5 lira commemorative souvenir poster of a Tesco value petrol bomb, its fuse alight. The proceeds, he stated on his website, were to go to the People's Republic of Stokescroft, a neighborhood revival organization. Banksy's generosity was not universally welcomed. Critics denounced the artist as a champagne socialist. He has countered this kind of charge repeatedly, for instance, telling the New Yorker by email, "I give away thousands of paintings for free. I don't think it's possible to make art about world poverty and trouser all the cash." On his website, he provides high-resolution images of his work for free downloading. The irony, he added, that his anti-establishment art commands huge prices isn't lost on him. "I love the way capitalism finds a place, even for its enemies. It's definitely boom time in the discontent industry. I mean, how many cakes does Michael Moore get through?" While the value of his pieces soars, a poignancy attends some of Banksy's creative output. A number of his works exist in memory and photographs. When I recently wandered in London, searching for 52 previously documented examples of Banksy's street art, 40 works had disappeared altogether, whitewashed over or destroyed. Fittingly, the last chapter in the enigmatic Banksy saga involves an unsolved mystery. This summer, during the London Games, he posted 2 images of Olympic-themed pieces online: a javelin thrower lobbing a missile and a pole vaulter soaring over a barbed wire fence. Naturally, a Banksonian twist occurs. The locations of this street art remain undisclosed. Somewhere in London, a pair of new Banksys awaits discovery. That's it, guys. Now go answer those questions.